Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to my channel, and today we'll be talking about one of the most unique science champion in the contest, that is, the Spider Woman. Now she's got a super interesting loop with all the fury buffs and power stings. Also, she can be pretty nasty on defense too. So if you're planning to rank her up or just want to learn how to use her, you're in the right place, because in this video we will be talking about things that you should know before you use Spider Woman. Let's get into it. So starting off with her basic abilities, Spider-Woman is immune to poison, neutralize, and power steal. Now that neutralize immunity is a big deal, especially since she's a science champion who relies heavily on buffs. And considering she'll often be going up against mystic champions, this makes her incredibly strong in those matchups. So these makes her really solid against a lot of annoying champs like Rintra, Man-Thing, and so on. One cool thing is that all of her personal effects, except for stun and power gain, are actually paused during any special attacks. That means you don't have to worry about your buffs falling off during the opponent's special attacks. One other thing to note is that she is only the second science champion after Photon with neutralized immunity in her base kit. Now let's talk about those fury buffs. She gains a fury for every 5 hits in her combo, but if you start a combo against an opponent who's not stunned, then your each crits count as 2 hits, so you can build furies even faster. Also, you have a 20% chance to gain a fury whenever she gets hit. This is great when she is a defender. The furies last 15 seconds and you can stack them up to 20. Also, the buff duration can't be reduced by any ability, and you can refresh them just by dodging a special attack using dexterity or evade. Now, let's quickly go over some of her core abilities. So, whenever she gains a buff, she inflicts a debilitate debuff for 20 seconds. And this can stack up to 6. Now if you are fighting against mystics, it becomes a severe debuff. In case if you are wondering what this severe debuffs are, these are debuffs that can't be removed by purify or cleanse. And if any of her buffs expire or are nullified, she inflicts the opponent with a non-stacking 50% wither debuff for 1 second. And when that ends, she gains a power gain passive granting her 100% of the power denied while Wither was active. This is really great because this allows you to counter and steal power from the Mystic Dispersion Mastery. Also, every 15 seconds she applies Ensnare and a 100% fumble debuff for 7 seconds. This timer is paused during Spider-Woman's special attacks, and if you get inflicted with fumble, you won't be able to use dexterity during your special attacks. This turns her SP1 from avoidable to deadly. Now let's talk about the Venom Blasts. So Spider-Woman can inflict personal instant shocks that can deal a burst of energy damage, and when a buff on Spider-Woman is nullified, she inflicts 2 instant shocks. Also, when she inflicts a shock or one is prevented by an immunity, she inflicts a severe power sting debuff for 10 seconds. And as a defender, power stings only last for 7 seconds. Now this power sting damage scales up with how much power and number of bars of power the opponent had, and as a defender this damage scales only with base attack. Now, important thing to note is that any shock can trigger this power sting, including shocks from quest nodes. This means that nodes that inflict a lot of shock can significantly increase her defender threat. Another important point is that the damage that she gives from her own shock is pretty small, and it doesn't matter if her opponent is shock immune, the real damage comes from power stings. Now, one other interesting ability that she has is the evade mechanics, which is super useful when you are fighting an opponent with unstoppable or miss. So when you strike an unstoppable opponent or misses an attack, you gain a 100% evade buff for 2 seconds. This evade buff can trigger while you're blocking, and when it triggers, this effect goes on cooldown for 10 seconds, or until a buff on Spider-Woman is nullified or she is immune to an effect. Also, for each non-damaging debuff on both champions, Spider-Woman has a 2% chance to evade incoming attacks, and this chance can go up to 24%. Also note that this evade does not trigger while she is blocking. Now let's talk about the special attacks. Her SP1 is simple. Each hit inflicts an instant shock, and if she has buffs, it'll consume one to apply another shock per hit. So yeah, you really only want to throw this when you've got enough buffs stacked, because more shock you apply, more power sting you give. Also keep in mind that she can turn any buffs into shocks, not only her own buffs. Now, when using your special 2, you gain 5 fury buffs and refresh all the buffs on Spider-Woman. Also, the final hit inflicts a non-stacking 100% retribution passive for 20 seconds. Also, when an attack strikes an unstoppable opponent or misses, this effect refreshes. And finally, the special 3 inflict 15 instant shocks, a stun passive for 4 seconds, and you also gain a non-stacking 33% energized buff for 10 seconds. Now let's talk about the signature ability. So if you've got her awakened, whenever one of her fury buffs is used or nullified, she gets it back as a passive fury. So it helps her to stay stacked up, and every intercept also gives her additional fury. And finally, if you're dodging back during the final hit of an opponent's special, you get a guaranteed evade. It won't trigger if you already dodged it, but it's really a nice safety net. Now, to answer whether she needs it or not. You don't necessarily need it, but it's good to have since it provides more damage with the extra furies. Now let's see how to use her. So start off by building those furies, hit the opponent, keep your combos clean, and avoid stunning too much so you can use that crit bonus. Then use dexterity to dodge opponent's specials and refresh your furies. Once you've got a bunch of fury stacks, throw SP2 to gain more and trigger that retribution. Then immediately go into an SP1 loop, turning all those furies into power stings. Then rinse and repeat. So this is what you have to do to squeeze out her damage. Now let's see this in action. Now one important thing to note is that in most cases, special 2 into special 1 loop can give more damage than going for the special 3. However, special 3 does provide a considerable amount of shocks, which in turn inflicts power stings, and a free opening combined with an energized buff. This allows you to speed up your normal loop quite easily. But for most places like Battlegrounds, SP2 into SP1 is going to be enough to finish off your opponent. Now let's see how to fight her. So when you are fighting against her, you should avoid 2 things. 1, you don't want her placing a fumble debuff on you. If she does, you can't dex her specials. Second thing that you want to avoid is the power sting debuff that she inflicts when using her SP1. One important thing to note is that she can inflict this even through your block. So it's important that you learn to dex her special 1, or you can try to push her to special 2, but note that she is more likely to use special 1 while fumble is active. Now when this timer runs out, she'll place the fumble. So when that happens, the only way to remove it is by using your special attack. So make sure you have a special ready before this timer runs out. Now let's see how to dex her special 1. So to completely dex her special 1, you only need to do 2 swipes, as you can see. Let's learn how to do it. So for your first dex, start swiping immediately when she jumps after activating her SP1. And for your second dex, start swiping when that lightning through the ground comes near to you. So this is what you have to do to dex her special 1.